My name is Emma Walker. I'm 24, but when people look at me now, they sometimes forget that I used to be the shy little girl who hid behind her mother's skirt. I live in a small apartment above a bakery in Dayton, Ohio. The smell of cinnamon rolls greets me every morning, and sometimes that smell makes me feel brave. I try to be brave for my little girl, Lucy. Lucy is 5, with sticky fingers and a laugh that sounds like bells. She loves sparkly stickers, dinosaur pajamas, and asking 100 questions before breakfast. My mom's name is Rachel. My dad's name is Mark. My sister is Hannah. She has 3 kids, Noah, Mia, and baby Leo, and she lives about 30 minutes away. When life was simpler, we used to spend Sundays together. Over the years, things changed. Money got tight and words got sharp. I stopped going home as much. I started working nights at a call center and days at a small online shop. I learned how to stretch every dollar and how to smile even when my stomach rumbled. I never thought my mom would lie to my face. It began with a text. It was the kind of message that felt cold even on a phone screen. I still remember the words, because my phone saved that little string of letters like a knife saved a scar. The message read, "We're skipping your kid's birthday, things are tight." That line sat on my screen and refused to go away. I read it again. I read it 100 times. It was my mom telling me she would not come to Lucy's 6th birthday party. I typed back straight away. I typed in a calm voice because I wanted to be the adult, to be strong for Lucy. I wrote, "No problem. We understand. We'll make it small and fun just for Lucy." I put a smiley face at the end. My thumb hovered over the send button because something inside me wanted to write all the angry words. But Lucy was 5. She loved glitter and balloons. She didn't need the drama. I wanted to protect her. A week later, it was Christmas morning. Lucy had fallen asleep early with a picture of Santa clutched in her hand. I woke her up with a tiny bell, and she ran into the living room, shrieking with joy at a little pile of presents. I had wrapped them carefully. I had saved for months, skipping my own small wants so my daughter could feel special. Everything felt peaceful and quiet. I scrolled through my phone while she opened her gifts, and then I saw it. My mom had posted photos. Big photos. A table piled with shiny boxes. Balloons in gold and purple. A cake that looked like it belonged in a fancy shop. There were smiles in the pictures, the kind of smiles that said someone had planned, paid, and showed up. The caption read, "Christmas for the grandkids. Love you all. #blessed." My girl, still chewing a ribbon, leaned against my leg and whispered, "They forgot me again?" Her voice was a small, hurt thing that lodged itself in my heart. I felt my chest go cold. I scrolled closer. In the pictures, there were Hannah and her kids. There was my mom, beaming, holding baby Leo with one arm and a glittery gift bag in the other. There was my father, the man I grew up trusting, with his arm around Hannah. He smiled at the camera. I stared at the photos until they blurred. I swallowed hard. I could not believe it. My mom had told me they were tight. She had told me they were skipping Lucy's birthday. And there they were, posting full of money pictures like they had never said a word. I put my phone down and watched Lucy open a small box with a wooden dinosaur inside. Her face lit up brighter than any Christmas tree. I wanted to be happy for her. I wanted to believe in kindness. But my anger was a slow, hot thing, rising in my chest. There was betrayal there. A sting. I sat Lucy on my lap and hugged her. I told her, "We are the lucky ones. Look at that dino. Mommy made this for you." She smiled and stuck her tongue out in concentration as she played. That afternoon, I did what I always do when I feel the walls closing in. I cleaned. I scrubbed pots until they shone. I looked for something to fix. It calmed me down. But I kept thinking about the picture's gold balloons, about my mom's words on the phone. It felt like someone had traded my trust for a few likes on the internet. By the next morning, I still hadn't said anything to my mom. Sometimes silence is a shield. I told myself I would call later, that I would ask for the truth. But the night the pictures went up, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought of all the small ways my family had told me they loved me over the years, and all the quiet ways they had not. Around 9 in the morning, Lucy was in preschool and I was making coffee. The sun was thin and weak through the window. I hadn't had time to let the anger burn away. There was a loud pounding at my door. I thought it was a delivery. The first bang was heavy. The second bang was a crash that made the coffee mug tremble. My heart jumped like a trapped bird. I opened my apartment door just a crack, and my father stood there. His face was red and wild. His hair was messy, and he looked older than I had seen him in years. He was breathing in big, angry breaths. Behind him, my mom stood on the stair landing with a handbag, her eyes wide but her mouth hard. They looked like people who had rehearsed every angry line, but still, their anger felt raw and unplanned. "Emma," my father shouted. His voice wasn't just loud, it was like a hammer against glass. "What the hell is this?" He jabbed 2 fingers toward my phone that sat on the small table in the hallway. He shoved his way in before I could stop him. My mom followed, but more slowly, like she was dragging a guilt behind her. "What is what?" I said, though I already knew. My voice was small, and even I could hear the tremble. "Dad, you can't just." "You texted me," he yelled. It wasn't a question. It came at me like a wave. "You texted me about that post." My hands felt like they belonged to someone else. "I didn't text you anything," I said, but the lie looked thin even to me. I knew why he thought I had messaged him. He had seen the post. He had seen how things looked in the photos, the fancy presents, the balloons. The love seemed staged for the camera. My father slammed his palm on the kitchen counter. Plates rattled inside the cabinet. "You said we were skipping Emma's kid's birthday because we were tight," he spat. He called Lucy by my name the way people sometimes do when their anger is sharp. "You told me to tell the others it's tight. You told everyone. You said no presents. So, where did all this come from? Who paid for those gifts? Who paid for that cake?" My mouth opened and closed. My body felt 1,000 miles away. My mother moved toward me, her eyes pleading, but there was disgust there too, like she had been shamed. "Stop it, Mark," she said. But her voice didn't have power. She looked like a woman who had a secret and didn't know how to hold it anymore. I felt Lucy's small sticker pack in my sweater pocket like something that might keep me steady. I took it out and held onto it as if it were a rope. "Mom, you told me you were tight," I said. My words were soft but steady. "You told me you couldn't come to Lucy's birthday. You told me that in a text." I said it was fine. I felt Lucy's small sticker pack in my sweater pocket like something that might keep me steady. I took it out and held onto it as if it were a rope. "Mom, you told me you were tight," I said. My words were soft but steady. "You told me you couldn't come to Lucy's birthday. You told me that in a text." I said it was fine. My father stilled. He stared at me like he finally saw a ghost. My mother paled. Her handbag slipped from her shoulder and thumped onto the floor. It spilled a receipt and a small card. My father bent down to pick it up, his anger temporarily forgotten as curiosity, and something sharp like shame took its place. "That receipt is from Blossom Boutique," he said. $350 for toys and decorations. That's not tight. He stared at my mother. "You told me the truth was we were tight. You told me to tell Emma we couldn't come. Who were you trying to protect? Who were you trying to hide this from?" My mother swallowed. Her lips trembled. The look on her face broke something inside me that I hadn't known was fragile. For a moment, I felt like I was watching 2 versions of her. The woman who used to braid my hair and the woman who had become careful with who she helped. She looked at the receipt, and then at me. "It's not what you think," she whispered. Her voice was tiny, like a mouse in a storm. "I borrowed money from Hannah. I told Mark we'd keep it quiet because I wanted to surprise the kids. I didn't think it would look like this." My father laughed, a sharp, painful sound that had no joy. "You borrowed money and you lied to your daughter? You told her we were skipping her child's birthday because of money. You didn't just choose to surprise them. You chose to hide from your other daughter." He pointed at me, and then at the photo on my phone. "And then you went posting like you were the best grandma on earth. You made it a show." My heart thudded. I felt anger flare hot, and then go cold. "So you lied to me," I said. "You told me to tell Lucy that. You told me not to expect you. And then you paid for Hannah's Christmas. You lied to me." My voice cracked. My mother stared like she had been caught in a lie she had thought nobody would find. Emma, I just wanted the kids to have a good Christmas. Hannah's kids, they are so needy right now. You know, Hannah, she started, and then her words tumbled into excuses. I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask why my sister's kids were always first. I wanted to ask why I had to be the one who believed the lie, because I loved my mother and wanted to keep peace. Instead, I did something else. I stepped back and shook my head slowly, as if a great weight had been lifted. If things are tight, I said, looking at both of them, you could have told the truth. You could have said you wanted to save for Hannah's kids. You could have said you couldn't do both. But you lied. You hid it from me. My father moved closer, his face inches away from mine. He breathed out like a man who had been carrying coal in his chest. You should have known, he said. You should have seen it. You should have known. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Then he raised his voice again. Why didn't you fight for your daughter? Why did you tell us to skip her birthday? Why didn't you demand to be treated the same? I opened my mouth to answer, but the words tangled. The truth was simple but heavy. I told them it was fine because I believed my mother. I wanted Lucy's birthday to be small and happy, without more drama. I told them not to come because I didn't want to fight in front of the kids. I sacrificed my own hurt to keep the peace. And somehow, that had become ammunition. My father used my silence like a mirror to show me my own smallness. My mother sank into a chair and covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. I didn't know whether she was crying for herself or for what she had done. Hannah's receipt lay in the middle of the kitchen table like proof of betrayal. The air felt thick. No, I said, because the word felt honest. No, I won't let this slide. I felt something rise inside me. Not just anger, but a steady, hard resolve. For years I had bent. I had sat at holiday tables where my ideas were dismissed, where my achievements were given a small nod, and then buried under stories of how Hannah needed more help. I had watched my mother slide money and affection toward the loudest voice in the room. I had swallowed the hurt. I thought of Lucy, of her sticky fingers, of her belief in Santa and in Grandma's cookies. I thought of all the quiet ways people are hurt by those who are supposed to protect them. My chest felt full of a new kind of fire. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. I wanted them to see that words matter. My father slammed a hand on the table again. You told us to skip her birthday, he repeated, harder this time, like he was trying to force the truth into my bones. You told us. Why? His eyes were bright and wet. Why did you do that? I looked at him. I looked at my mother. I saw not only anger but fear in them. Fear that I might make a different choice now. Fear that I might stop being the quiet one. Fear that I might take back what I had given without asking. Because I wanted to protect Lucy's day, I said finally. Because I didn't want to fight. Because I wanted our family to be a place where my daughter could smile without anyone arguing. But you made that choice for me. You decided what was best and you lied about it. My father closed his eyes like a man in pain. We didn't think he couldn't finish. His voice broke. My mother reached for me, hand tremoring. Emma, please. I wanted to do something nice. I didn't want you to be hurt. I thought if I said the truth, you'd be angry. I thought you should forgive me afterwards. She stopped and looked like a woman who had realized her thinking had been selfish all along. I stepped away from her reach. I felt a cold sense of clarity. Forgiveness isn't something anyone can demand. It's something you earn. And lies take a long time to pay back. Before I could think of what to say next, the apartment door burst open again. My neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, stood in the hallway with her eyes wide. I heard shouting, she said. Is everything all right? Her voice was small and cautious. My father turned to the hallway, as if the whole world had arrived to see the truth. No, he said. Everything is not all right. He turned back to me and barked. You started this, Emma. You told us to skip the party. You told us we were tight. You told us to keep it quiet. You broke the family. I felt something in my chest break and then mend into a different shape. The anger sobered into something colder and sharper. I felt the map of my life change in an instant. I looked at my parents and saw two people who had chosen to hide and to hurt rather than to be honest. I thought of all the small moments they had chosen Hannah first, the rides, the loan, the loud apologies, and I felt the whole pattern like a bruise that wouldn't fade. "I did tell you it was fine," I said slowly. "Because it was fine to me. But fine doesn't mean forgettable. Fine doesn't mean lying. Fine doesn't mean you get to choose who deserves to be remembered." My father's face went pale. He took a breath as if to argue, but his voice caught. My mother's tears came faster, and she covered her face again, crying openly now. The house held a heavy, aching silence. My mind raced with the shape of what I might do next. The anger was still there, but it had a different texture now, no longer just fury, but a plan, something that tasted like justice. I told them I needed space. I told them I needed to think. They left with the receipt on the table like evidence of a crime. The door side shut behind them. I locked it and sat down on the kitchen floor, Lucy's dinosaur clasped in my hand. For a long time I sat there. My coffee had gone cold. The sunlight moved across the floor like a slow clock. I thought about the promise I had made to Lucy, to protect her, to teach her how to be kind, to show her how to stand up for herself. I thought about how kindness had been misunderstood in my family, how kindness became something to be taken advantage of. By late afternoon, I had decided something I had never thought I had the courage to do. I would not be the quiet person who forgave everything without consequence. I would not let my mother's lie become the story of my daughter's childhood. I would find a way to make them see the truth. Not to hurt them for the sake of revenge alone, but to make sure they understood that truth matters. To make sure Lucy learned that families don't get to decide who gets remembered. I started making a list. Small steps first. Call my sister, ask questions. Check the receipts. Talk to Hannah's neighbor who worked at the boutique. Send a message to the bakery that delivered the cake. Every small fact might be a rope that would let me climb out of the hurt and into the light. I was writing down names when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number popped up. "We saw your mom's post. We think something's off." My fingers trembled. The message had come from a local group that knew my family. Another message followed. "Meet us tonight. We can talk." My pulse quickened. Maybe I was not alone in noticing. Maybe other people saw what I saw. Maybe this was the start of something. And then there was a sound. A light knock at the window. I walked over and saw a small paper taped to the glass. It said in messy handwriting, "Don't trust them." There was a tiny drawing of a broken heart under the words. My breath hitched. Who had left that? Who else knew? Who else had watched and kept quiet? The apartment filled with the weight of what could happen next. I heard another bang at the front door. This time it wasn't my father. It was harder, angrier, like someone ready to make a scene. My heart slammed against my ribs. I opened the door slightly, and a man I had never seen stood there, his face set like stone. He didn't speak at first. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he raised his hand and pointed toward the road. "Your sister's house," he said quietly. "There's a truck outside. I think they brought everything back." His voice was small but steady. My head swam. "Brought everything back?" I asked. The word felt wrong. My hands were cold. My eyes flitted to Lucy's stickers, then to the receipt still lying on the table. He nodded. "Someone saw them moving boxes into the truck. People are talking at the corner store. They say the boxes are from Blossom Boutique." His eyes met mine. "You might want to see." The world narrowed down to the door, the truck, the boxes. I felt something like a drumbeat in my ears. I thought of the photos again, of the cake, of the glitter. I thought of the lies. My father would be furious if he knew someone else had come to tell me. He had tasted his anger and was not ready to give it up. My mother would be ashamed. My sister? I didn't know where she stood. The man at the door looked at me with a steady, almost pitying expression. "Don't let them lie to you," he said. "Go and look. See the truth with your own eyes." My legs felt heavy, like they belonged to someone moving through mud. I thought of Lucy at preschool, laughing with a glue stick on her hand. I thought of all the small kindnesses I had done that had been invisible. I thought of how easy it is for people to play favorites and hide behind the word tight. I stepped out into the cold air and felt it cut my face. The streets smelled like wet leaves and exhaust. The bakery bell chimed as someone opened the door across the way. I pulled my jacket tight and walked toward the truck. By the time I reached the corner, people had gathered. Voices hummed like bees. A man in a blue cap pointed at a white truck with ribbons still stuck to the rearview mirror. Boxes were stacked on the pavement. A woman with a stroller stared and then turned away. I inched closer until I could see what was on the boxes. My breath caught. The label said Blossom Boutique in neat black letters. Inside one of the boxes, I could see a sliver of shiny paper, the same glitter that had appeared in my mother's bright photos. Someone laughed nervously. Someone whispered, "Who does that?"
I felt my phone buzz again.
Another message. "Your dad is at Hannah's. He's yelling." I looked up at the small crowd and then at the truck. My mind filled with a dozen pictures, a dozen angry words. I knew, in that moment, that this was not the end. This was the start. The truck, the receipts, the photos, they were all threads in a knot, and I was determined to pull until the truth came loose. As I reached for my phone to call my dad, a voice cut through the murmurs like steel. "Emma Walker." It was my father, and he sounded like a man ready to explode. His face was redder than before, his eyes hard and watery all at once. Behind him, my mother stood frozen, as if the cold had taken the strength from her legs. Before I could move, my father strode forward and grabbed the box closest to me. He ripped the top open with a force that made everyone's breath stop. Inside were sparkling ribbons, colorful paper, and a small toy truck. He held it up like proof. His voice was loud and shaking. "They said they were tight," he shouted, and for a moment everyone was silent, watching. The toy truck slipped from his hands and landed on the pavement with a small, innocent clatter. The sound felt wrong, like a child's laugh at the wrong time. I felt my heart drop into a place I couldn't reach. The crowd leaned in. Phones came out. Someone whispered, "Are they taking it back?" Another voice said, "What's going on?" My father's face was a storm. He looked at my mother, and then at me. "Why would you lie?" he screamed. "Why would you do this to your own daughter?" My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips trembled. A man in the crowd stepped forward, and then the first raindrops fell, like a curtain closing on a stage. People began to murmur louder. Someone called for calm. Someone else fumbled for their keys. I stood there feeling the cold rain hit my skin, watching my family unravel like cheap ribbon. Right then, I knew this would not be the last loud sound. I knew things would change. I knew I had stepped into something I could not walk back from. And then, before I could think, before I could plan the next move, a figure from the crowd shoved forward. It was Hannah. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide with panic. She grabbed the toy truck from the pavement and hugged it like a lifeline. "Stop," she cried. Her voice cracked like thin ice. "Stop. Please, please stop." She looked at my mother, at my father, at me. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for anything. But no one listened. The rain spattered harder. The crowd closed in a little more. My father's shouting echoed down the street. There was a sudden rush of people and sound. I felt something inside me tighten like a fist. Then, a loud, sharp sound sliced through the chaos, the police siren. 2 patrol cars pulled up at the corner, their lights stabbing at the gray sky. Neighbors watched from their porches. Cameras were out. Something heavy and public had begun. The story had started with a text, cold and brief. It had moved to a picture that burned like gold. Now it was on the street, with boxes and ribbons and the rain and the sirens. My mouth tasted like coins. I gripped Lucy's wooden dinosaur in my pocket until my knuckles hurt. My heart was pounding. I wanted to run back to my apartment, to hold Lucy, to tell her everything would be okay. But my feet were planted on the pavement. The crowd closed around us like a closing book. My family stood in the center, small and exposed, and for the first time I saw them not as my protectors, but as people who could fail. My phone buzzed once more. A new message lit the screen. They made a post. They say we started it. They're saying you wanted attention. The words were like ice. My face warmed and prickled with anger and resolve. I knew what I had to do next, not in full, but the shape of it. I would not let them tell the story first. But before I could make a plan, my father whirled toward me. His eyes were blazing. He took a step forward, and the force of it sent a dozen small voices scattering. He grabbed my arm so hard that I felt the pull in my shoulder. You started this, he barked in my ear. You told them to skip the party.
You told them to tell lies.
You made us look like villains. I looked at his face. He was shaking. His hand around my arm felt like a vice. I could smell rain and old coffee and the bakery across the road. I could feel the crowd pressing in. My phone buzzed again with more messages. My head swam with every story that had been told about us, and the one I wanted to write. The next thing that happened was not small. The next thing tore through the air like a bell. My father's hand came down harder than I expected. He slammed the box of toys to the pavement, and the toys spilled out, rolling like small, colorful planets. People gasped. A child in the crowd started to cry. My father's voice cracked and then broke into something I had never heard before, a yell that was part grief, part anger, part panic. Why did you let them post that? He screamed at my mother. Why did you make them think we were tight when we had money for this? Why did you make your own daughter feel small? My mother tried to answer, but the rain had blurred her words. Her hands were shaking. She looked like someone who had been caught in a lie so big that it had become real. I felt something inside me snap into focus. This was raw and ugly and public. It was the kind of thing that could change everything. And then, the last thing that happened before the chapter closed was a sound I will never forget. It was not a shout or a bang. It was a small, sickening crack as the toy truck, the one Hannah had clutched, split open when it hit the pavement. The little plastic wheel popped off and rolled into a gutter, and the sight of it made the air feel heavier. My father looked at the broken wheel like a judge looking at evidence. My mother fell to her knees in the rain. Hannah screamed something that did not make sense. The crowd began to move closer, hungry for the next piece of the story. I watched it all happen and felt the cold seed of something grow inside me, not just anger, but the beginning of a plan. I would not end this here. I would not let their lies stay comfortable or easy. I would make sure the truth came out, piece by piece, like sorting toys from a broken box. I turned and walked away then, my shoes slapping wet pavement, my mind moving as if writing a map. The rain soaked through my jacket, but it didn't touch the fire inside me. I clutched Lucy's wooden dinosaur and felt its smooth edges press into my palm. Behind me, my family stood in the rain, surrounded by boxes and cameras and neighbors. Their voices rose and fell like storm wind. My heart beat hard.
I didn't know what would happen next.
I only knew that this was not over. The chapter ends with the sound of my father's scream still in my ears, the broken toy wheel glinting in the gutter, and the rain washing away the footprints we had all left. The rain hit my face like tiny knives. My shoes were soaked and my jacket stuck to my arms. I walked away from the crowd because the noise made my head pound. My father's scream still rang in my ears. People talked, pointed, and took videos with their phones. My chest felt tight like someone had tied a rope around it. I wanted to run home and hold Lucy and tell her everything would be okay, but I knew I could not hide.
Not now.
Not after the toys had spilled and the tiny wheel had rolled into the gutter. Not after my mother had fallen to her knees in the rain. The story was out on the street and in the phones of everyone who had been watching. I walked until my legs felt like they might give out. The bakery bell chimed as I passed. Mrs. Caldwell stood inside wiping a counter, watching me through the window. Her face looked worried. I nodded once because I did not want to talk. She mouthed, "You okay?" I shook my head, which meant no, I was not okay. When I reached my apartment, I shut the door and leaned against it. My heart pounded. My hands were wet and trembling. I set Lucy's wooden dinosaur on the table and sat down on the floor. For a few minutes I did nothing but breathe. In the quiet, the sounds of the street faded. I could hear my own heartbeat. My phone buzzed with messages. My dad had texted, "Come to Hannah's house now." My mom sent, "Please talk to me." Hannah had written something frantic about the police. My neighbor had sent a single line. I saw it all. "Call me if you need anything." My head spun. I opened my messages and read them one by one, but none of them made anything better. I called my dad. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough. "Emma," he said. The single sound of my name was sharp. "Where are you?" "At home," I answered. "I just got back." "You need to come back," he said.
Now.
"We need to talk. The police were here. She's upset." His voice broke. I could hear the rain in the background. Everyone is watching. People are saying things. I put the phone on speaker and sat on the sofa. "Dad, I'm coming," I said. I wanted to ask questions, but I kept them small. "Do you want me to bring anything?" "No," he said. "Just come." When I stepped out again, the sky had started to clear a little. The rain left tiny puddles that reflected the gray clouds. The streets smelled like wet dirt and hot bread. I walked quickly, my phone pressed to my ear sometimes, listening to parts of the story when they came. My mind ran like a wheel, questions landing and rolling away. Why would my mom lie? Why would they pretend to be poor only to throw a big party for Hannah's kids? Had Hannah known? Had she asked for this? Or had someone helped her without telling me? The maze of possibilities made my head ache. When I reached Hannah's house, the street was quieter than before. The truck was gone. The boxes were cleared away. A few people lingered on porches, whispering. My father stood on the front step, his hands in his pockets, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in one day. My mother sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes red from crying. Hannah paced in the doorway, picking at her lip, eyes hollow. The toys were inside, stacked in a corner like evidence. "Emma," Dad said when he saw me. His voice was low. He wrapped me in a hug that was more like a squeeze. It felt like he tried to hold me together. I let him for a second, and then I pulled away. I needed air. I needed facts. They took me inside. The living room looked the same as always. Soft couches, family photos on the walls, Hannah's drawings taped above the fireplace. But everything felt different. The toys from the boxes lay neatly on the coffee table, as if someone had tried to make them look like a happy gift pile. The cake box was empty. Ribbons hung limp. "You saw them take the boxes," I said. The words came out like an order. "Who helped them?" Dad rubbed his forehead. "Neighbors said they saw someone loading boxes into a truck. There was a man with a hoodie. He looked like he wanted to be invisible. Someone whispered that he was from outside town. They said he had a van. That's all." He looked at me like he hoped I would snap my fingers and the truth would appear. I sat down and pulled a toy car toward me. It rolled in a small circle and stopped against my shoe. Hannah sat across from me. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked tired. "I didn't ask for anything," she said, and her voice sounded small and true. "Mom called me last week and asked if I could watch the kids for a few hours on Christmas Eve because she had a surprise. That's all. I thought maybe she wanted to go to the church or maybe she was helping someone. I didn't know what she was doing." My eyes searched her face for lies. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to find someone who had told the truth. "Did you know about the post?" I asked. Hannah shook her head.
No.
I woke up on Christmas, and the house was full. I thought Mom had surprised us. I thought she'd been saving. I was surprised, but I didn't think about you. I thought, well, they did this for the kids, and I didn't ask questions. "I'm sorry." She looked at me, and in her eyes there was shame. "I wish I had told you." I swallowed. Maybe Hannah really didn't know. Maybe my mother had cooked this up herself. Maybe she had lied to both of us. Maybe someone else had helped her, a neighbor, someone generous, or a stranger who saw a chance to make children happy. The answer still hid behind a curtain. The police had come and left. They took notes and pictures, asked a few questions, and drove away. I wondered what they thought. I wondered if they thought it was petty, a family argument blown up by social media. But the police car had given my father something to blame and someone to talk to.
He had talked until his voice ran dry.
After the officers left, we did what families do when trouble sits heavy in the room. We tried to make food. We made coffee. We wrapped small presents for the kids in silence. Lucy's preschool called and said she was fine, happily playing a game. The regular small tasks of life felt like anchors. They kept us from falling apart. I stepped out into the backyard for a moment to breathe. The air smelled like cut grass. Mrs. Caldwell was near the fence, holding 2 paper cups of steaming coffee.
She handed one to me.
"You look like you could use this," she said softly. I took it and felt the warmth spread through my cold hands. "Who left the note on my window?" I asked her, thinking of the messy handwriting that had told me, "Don't trust them." Mrs. Caldwell's face changed. "Oh, honey, I didn't see who left it. Some kid maybe. People are talking, Emma. They saw the pictures, and they remember the things you said about the birthday. They saw the boxes. It all looks bad." She sipped her coffee, choosing her words like careful steps. "But I know you, Emma. You have always been kind. You did what you thought was right." Her words were soft, but they touched me. I realized something simple and true. Kindness does not mean letting people hurt you. Kindness does not mean you must always be quiet when something feels wrong. And kindness does not mean others will always be kind back. I went inside and found my mother sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, face drawn. She looked older than before. I sat across from her, and for a long time we did not speak. The only sound was the clock ticking and the faint hum of the heater.
Finally, she looked at me.
"Emma," she said, and there was a tremble in her voice. "I did it because I wanted the kids to be happy. I thought if I said we were skipping the birthday, they would not expect anything and I could save up and surprise them later. When Hannah's kids had nothing, I panicked. I borrowed money from Hannah. Well, I asked Hannah to lend me money, and I promised to pay her back. I didn't think it would look like lying. I thought I could fix it." "Why lie to me?" I asked simply. "Why tell me you were tight?" "Because I was ashamed," she said. "I didn't want you to think I was selfish for giving to one family and not the other. I thought if I told you, you'd be hurt and maybe you'd tell everyone. I thought it would be easier to keep it a secret." She dropped her head into her hands and wept quietly. Tears came to my eyes too, but not only for my mother. I felt tired. I felt small and mad and sad all at once. I thought of Lucy, of how much I wanted her to grow up in a family where truth mattered. I thought of my dad, who had tried to make everyone speak and had only made a scene. Hannah knocked on the kitchen door and walked in with baby Leo in her arms. The baby's face was smeared with cake, and he smiled like the world was still a safe place. For a moment, the room felt gentle. The little boy's sticky fingers and gummy smile did what nothing else could. They made the hurt less sharp. I leaned forward and kissed his soft forehead and felt a small, quiet thing like forgiveness stir. We made a plan, clumsy and small. We would talk to Hannah's kids and explain. We would tell Lucy the truth at a level she could understand. Grandma thought it would be a good surprise for Hannah's kids. But she should have told us. We would ask questions, check the receipts, and find out who had helped pay for everything. We would speak to neighbors, the boutique, and the bakery. We would not let the story be told by the people who liked the loud version. I called a number that had come up on the receipt, Blossom Boutique. The woman I spoke to was kind but confused. She said the sale was under a different name, one I didn't recognize. The card had been used with a nickname. That didn't help. I left my number and asked if they could check their security cameras. They said they would try. All afternoon people came and went like weather. Some brought food. Others stood in corners and watched. My father stayed out front, talking to neighbors and telling them the truth as he saw it. He tried to explain how our family had become messy and how we had not planned to hurt anyone. Some nodded. Some shook their heads. The neighborhood was its usual mix of gossip and care. By evening, the kids were tired and quiet. We gave them PJs and warm milk and tucked them into beds stacked like boxes. Hannah's husband came home late with red eyes. He had missed most of a scene. He hugged his kids and seemed to understand the trouble without needing all the words. When the house finally calmed, The adults sat down and tried to talk like grown-ups who had made mistakes and felt the weight of them. We agreed on small steps. My mother would apologize publicly, but only after we had all talked together. We would try to repair the image we had shattered on the street. We would ask Hannah if she had known more than she said. We would check bank accounts if needed. We would try to put together a real story to tell the neighbors and the people who had seen the post. That night, I went home to Lucy and sat on the floor with her while she fell asleep. She held her wooden dinosaur and hummed a little tune. I watched her tiny chest rise and fall and felt fierce like a lion. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to teach her truth and courage. I wanted to show her how to be kind but not a doormat. Just as sleep took her, my phone buzzed. A message came from an unknown number. It read, "We found the van. We saw who drove it." My hands went cold. I stared at the screen until the words blurred.
Who had seen it?
Who had been following us? My heart raced. I typed back, "Who? Tell me." No answer came. For a long time the screen stayed dark, and then another message popped up. "Meet near the park. Midnight. Come alone." My stomach dropped. The streetlight outside my window cast long shadows across the floor. The quiet of the night felt heavy, like a lid being placed on a pot. My mind raced. Was this a trap? A neighbor trying to help? Someone who wanted to tell me the truth in private? My head filled with questions and fear. I thought of my father's scream, of the toy wheel in the gutter, of my mother on her knees. I thought of how the truth had been tangled into lies. I wanted to rip the whole thing apart and lay it clean. But now someone wanted to meet me at midnight in a park. It felt dangerous. It felt urgent. I did not sleep. I watched Lucy breathe and counted the seconds until midnight. My phone buzzed again with another message. "Come. We can tell you everything." My hands shook. I knew, in the bones of me, that whatever happened next would change everything. The truth was no longer something we could sort out with coffee and apologies. It had teeth now. It had reach. I did not tell anyone about the meeting. I wanted to know what I would hear alone so I could decide how to act. I felt both brave and foolish, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. The night went on slow. The house was quiet. Somewhere in the dark, people slept. For me, sleep would not come easy. As the clock rolled toward midnight, I dressed quietly, put on a coat, and slipped out the door. The cold air hit my face. The park was close, only a short walk away. Lampposts made pale moons on the pavement. I kept my phone in my pocket like a talisman. My heart felt like a trapped bird. When I reached the park, the swings creaked in the wind. The benches were empty. The world felt like a stage before the curtains rise. I walked to the center where the old oak tree stood and waited. My eyes scanned the dark. I felt foolish and ready all at once. Then someone stepped out from behind the tree. At first I thought it was the man from the truck, someone with a hoodie, but when the figure came closer, I saw a face I knew. It was Mrs. Caldwell. She held a flashlight that made her eyes look like coins. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. She looked at me with a careful expression. "You shouldn't have come alone," she said. Her voice was small but steady. I told them not to, but they insisted. "Who insisted?" I asked. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. On it was a license plate number and a street name. "This is what we found," she said. "We followed the van yesterday. It stopped at the back of a house 2 streets over. Men with hoodies carried the boxes in, and then a car left. We couldn't get close. We thought maybe it was a donation center, but then we saw the bags with your mom's handwriting on the tags. Someone's been moving things." My chest tightened. "Who did you see?" I asked. The paper felt like a map leading to a hidden room. Mrs. Caldwell looked around and then leaned closer. "It was 3 men," she said. "One looked like he had a tattoo on his neck. Another had a limp. The third," she stopped as if she had swallowed something. "The third looked like a man we saw before. He comes to the bakery sometimes. He talks to Hannah. His name is Troy." My heart lurched.
Troy.
I had seen him in the grocery store. He had smiled once at Lucy. He was not from out of town. He was from here. He had been in our lives, in the corners, easy to miss. Mrs. Caldwell folded her hands. They left in a black van. We followed to a warehouse near the river. We were not brave enough to go in. We called the number on the receipt to see who paid, but they said it was a gift. They had no name. I felt the cold slip away, and something else take its place. A sharp focus, like headlights. The problem had arms now. It had people. It had a name. Before I could ask another question, a car horn blared in the distance. A shadow moved near the entrance of the park. My heart slammed. Mrs. Caldwell grabbed my arm and yanked me behind the tree. Someone approached with slow, heavy steps. A man in a hoodie came toward us, but it wasn't one I knew. He paused and then walked on. I peered from behind the tree and saw a figure slip into the shadows near the path. I felt a small panic. Someone had known to come here. Mrs. Caldwell's fingers dug into my arm. "We should go," she whispered. "This is getting dangerous." I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand that we stay and find out everything. But my brain told me she was right. The park at midnight was not a place to make enemies. We quietly turned and walked back toward the street. As we left, a car slowed by the curb and 2 headlights shone into the park. For a moment, I thought the people in the car had seen us. Then it moved away. My palms were clammy. I tried to swallow the fear. When we reached my building, Mrs. Caldwell turned to me and held my hands. "Be careful," she said. "And whatever you do, don't let them make you small. You did not start this. You only wanted a simple truth to be told." I nodded. Her words were like a steady lantern. I went upstairs and opened my door. Lucy slept with one arm flung over her head. The house smelled like warm laundry. I slipped into bed and watched her breathe. I thought of the pieces of paper and license plates, of the men with hoodies, and of the van near the river. I thought of my mom lying and my father's scream and Hannah's tears. I did not know if I had the courage to follow the map that had just been placed in my lap. I did not know if telling the truth would fix things or make them worse. I only knew that the next morning would bring more questions. I only knew that the news had not yet stopped. The story was still moving. The next blow would come, and when it did, it would be loud. Just before dawn, my phone buzzed with an unknown number again. The message read, "We can prove it. Meet at the warehouse. 6 a.m. Be alone." My muscles clenched. The screen glowed in the dark like an invitation and a threat at once. I stared at it until the words blurred. The world felt like it balanced on a thin wire. I could stay home and hide, or I could go and try to pull the curtain back. I thought of Lucy and the kind of person I wanted to be for her, someone brave enough to find the truth and gentle enough to lead with kindness. I typed back in a shaky voice, "Who are you?" The reply came almost immediately. "A neighbor who wants to help. Come alone." My hands trembled as I read it. The choices spread out like roads. Each one was dangerous in its own way. I had time to think only a little, because the sun would rise soon, and with it the next storm of words and faces. The chapter would end on the edge of a new action. The choice to go or to stay. In my chest, a small fire burned steady and bright. I could not let the lies win. I could not let my daughter's childhood be written by someone else's post. I packed a small bag quietly, phone, keys, a sweater, and some cash. I left a note on the kitchen table that read, "Lucy, Mommy had to go for a little bit. I love you." It was small and true. Then I stepped out into the pale morning and walked toward the river, toward the warehouse, feeling like someone who was about to step into a story. The rest of that night felt like walking through thick fog. Dad's words kept spinning in my head. "You ruined Christmas. You turned your own daughter against the family. You did this." Every sentence felt like a slap. But Sophia never left my side. Even when Dad stormed out, even when the house finally went quiet, she kept her small hand on my arm like she was the one comforting me. After he left, she whispered, "Mom, am I really the problem?" I hugged her so tightly, she could barely breathe.
"No, baby.
You're the blessing they don't know how to treat." But inside, my chest felt crushed. I kept replaying everything. Mom skipping the birthday, the Christmas posts, My message exposing them, Dad showing up like I was the villain, and now Sophia asking if she was the mistake in the family puzzle. That was the moment something broke inside me. Not anger, not hatred, not even revenge. Something colder, clarity. Still, I try to hold on to some kind of normalcy. The next day, after barely sleeping, I took Sophia out to get hot chocolate and look at Christmas lights. Just something gentle to pull us both back from the emotional cliff we'd been shoved onto. It helped a little. She giggled at a house with lights shaped like a dancing snowman, and for that moment, she looked like a kid again instead of someone carrying grown-up hurt. Later that evening, we watched a movie together on the couch. Sophia snuggled under a blanket and eventually fell asleep with her head on my arm, breathing softly. It was peaceful, quiet, normal, a small, warm moment after all the chaos. And for a little while, I believed things would settle down. But peace never lasts long in a family where resentment runs deep. 2 days later, just before New Year's Eve, my phone started blowing up again, this time from my brother, Eric. "What did you say to Dad?" his text read. "He's been upset for days." I stared at the message, feeling that knot of frustration twist deeper. I typed back slowly, carefully. "Tell me what he said I did." 3 dots appeared.
Disappeared. Appeared again.
Then, "He said you told Sophia that everyone hates her. He said you're brainwashing her." I just stared. Brainwashing? Really? It felt like someone punched me in the lungs. Because the truth was the opposite. I spent years trying to convince her our family loved her, even when the evidence said otherwise. I took a deep breath and typed back. "I didn't say anything like that. She saw your Christmas post."
She cried.
"What did you expect me to tell her?" Eric didn't reply for a long while. When he finally did, it wasn't what I hoped for. "You didn't have to make her feel excluded. You made it a bigger deal than it was. Mom didn't mean anything by it." I sat there in disbelief. Didn't mean anything? Skipping her birthday didn't mean anything? Posting a big Christmas party the same week didn't mean anything? It was like arguing with a wall that had already decided you were wrong. For the rest of the evening, I tried to shake it off. I cooked dinner, cleaned up, helped Sophia with a puzzle she'd gotten as a gift from my friend, not from family. We laughed a little. We relaxed a little. And the day softened around the edges. Finally, after putting her to bed, I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and tried to breathe. Maybe this storm will pass, I told myself. Maybe they'll calm down. Maybe this is just a bad holiday season. But then, around 10:30 p.m., my front door camera pinged. Motion detected. Front door. My stomach tightened. I opened the app. And there they were. My mother, my father, and Eric. Standing on my porch in the dark. All of them with tight faces like they came ready for a war. Before I could even stand, the banging started.
Loud.
Repeated.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
My mother's voice cut through the door like a knife. "Open this door right now." Sophia woke up instantly screaming, "Mom, what's happening?" The banging got harder. My dad shouted, "We're not leaving until you fix this." Eric added, "You're tearing the family apart. Open up." My heart slammed against my ribs, so hard I felt dizzy. This wasn't a conversation anymore. This wasn't a disagreement. This was an ambush. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I didn't even think about it. I dialed 911. As the ringing started, my mother screamed from outside. "You think you can ruin our family and walk away? Tonight, you answer for what you did." And that was the moment I realized. They didn't come to talk. They came to destroy me. And this time, I wasn't letting them in. The 911 operator picked up on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? My voice shook. My family is pounding on my door, yelling, refusing to leave. I'm home with my daughter. I'm scared. Behind me, the door rattled again, my dad hitting it hard enough that the frame groaned. The operator's voice stayed calm. "Ma'am, stay on the line. Police are on the way." "Is the door locked?" "Yes." "Do not open it." My hands trembled so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Sophia ran into the hallway, crying.
Mom.
Why are they yelling? Why are Grandpa and Grandma here? I knelt, grabbed her shoulders gently. Sweetheart, go into my room and stay on the bed. Do not come out until I say, okay. Her lips shook, but she nodded and ran back down the hall. Outside, my mother screamed again. Open this door, or we'll keep coming back. You won't shut us out. I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to breathe, trying not to break apart. They weren't acting like people who loved me. They weren't even acting like people who wanted to solve anything. They were acting like people who came prepared to force control. The operator stayed on the line. Officers are 2 minutes away, ma'am. Stay where you are. But 2 minutes felt like 2 hours. Mom yelled, "This is your fault. All of it. You fill that child's head with lies." Dad shouted over her, "You'll come out and face us like an adult." Eric added, "Stop being dramatic and open the door."
Dramatic?
They were pounding my door like they wanted to break it down. I paced toward the peephole and looked through. My father's jaw was clenched, and even through the small circle of glass, I could see the anger in his eyes. My mother looked wild, hair all over the place, red-faced, pointing at the door like she was calling fire down from the sky. Eric looked uncomfortable but still stood behind them like a wall of support. Then, finally, red and blue lights flashed across my driveway. My mother gasped. She called the police? She called the police on her own family? Dad swore loudly. Unbelievable. The police car rolled to a stop. 2 officers stepped out. I let out a shaky breath I didn't know I was holding. Then it hit me. This wasn't over. This was just another explosion in an already burning house. I opened the door just a crack, enough to show the officers I was the caller, but not enough to let my family push inside. The taller officer lifted a hand calmly. "Ma'am, please step back. We'll handle this." He turned to my parents. "Sir, ma'am, we received a call about you banging on the door and refusing to leave." My mother snapped. "We did nothing wrong. She's the one causing all the problems." The shorter officer said, "Ma'am, you need to step away from the door." Dad pointed at me. "She's poisoning that little girl against us." I felt my throat tightening. My daughter saw their Christmas post. She was hurt. I didn't do anything wrong. My mother scoffed. "Oh, please. You've always twisted things." Eric finally spoke up. "Can everyone calm down?" "No," Mom yelled. "She thinks she can embarrass us online, talk back, and then call the cops? On her own parents." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, yelling at us will not help." Dad shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable, ungrateful. Ungrateful." There it was again. That word always came out when I didn't fall in line. The taller officer stepped closer to my parents. "You 3 need to leave the property right now." My mother's mouth fell open. "Leave? We're her family." "That doesn't change the law," the officer said. "She asked you to leave. You refused. That makes this trespassing." Dad growled, "We're not leaving until she fixes what she broke." The officer's tone shifted, firmer.
"Sir, leave. Now."
Dad stared at him, breathing hard. Then he turned his glare on me. "This is the last time we're going to let you disrespect us." My mother jabbed a finger toward my house. "You want to play this game?
Fine.
But don't come crying when you realize what you've done." The officers escorted them toward their car. Mom kept yelling all the way down the driveway. "You're ruining this family. You're turning your daughter into a victim. You're the problem, not us." I closed the door quietly, locked it, then leaned my forehead against it as my body sank down. Not crying, just exhausted. After a few minutes, the taller officer knocked lightly. "Ma'am, can we speak with you for a moment?" I opened the door again, just enough to talk. He softened his voice. "Are you safe? Do you feel threatened by them?" I nodded weakly.
Yes.
I didn't know what they were going to do. He wrote something on his notepad. "You can file a restraining order if this continues." A restraining order. Against my own parents. I swallowed the ache in my chest. I'll think about it. They told me to call back immediately if my family returned, then drove away. When their car disappeared down the street, the house finally fell silent. No yelling, no pounding, no accusations, just silence. I walked down the hall to my bedroom. Sophia sat on my bed, knees pulled to her chest, tears drying on her cheeks. "Are they gone?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, baby. They're gone." She crawled into my arms, trembling. "Why do they hate us?" My throat closed. "They don't hate us. They just don't understand us. And they don't know how to be kind right now."
She didn't respond.
She just curled tighter into me, clinging like she was afraid I might disappear too. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling something changing inside me, slowly, quietly, painfully. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Completely done. I knew my family crossed a line they couldn't come back from. But they weren't finished with me. Not even close. Because the next morning, at 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. Not from Eric. But from Child Protective Services. "Hello. This is CPS requesting a welfare check regarding your daughter. We received a report and would like to schedule a visit today." My blood turned to ice.
A report?
A welfare check. My knees almost buckled. My fingers shook as I typed. "Who made the report?" Their reply came seconds later. The report was made anonymously. But I already knew. I already knew exactly who had done it. And that was when I realized my parents weren't just angry. They were trying to take my daughter from me. CPS said they needed to come that same day. My heart was pounding so loudly that it felt like it was shaking my whole body. I kept rereading the message, hoping it would magically change into something different. It didn't. My parents weren't done hurting me. Now they were trying to hurt my daughter. For a few seconds, my brain went blank. Then survival mode kicked in. I took a breath, stood up straight, and forced my voice to be steady. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "We're not panicking. We're preparing." I went to Sophia's room. She was still asleep, curled into a ball, clutching her stuffed bear. Her face looked peaceful, nothing like the fear she'd carried the night before. I kissed her forehead. No matter what my parents tried, they would not take her from me. Never. I cleaned the living room slowly, wiping down surfaces and folding blankets, not because my house was messy, but because fear makes you feel like you have to do something, anything, to stay in control. Then, at 10:06 a.m., there was a gentle knock on the door. Not pounding, not yelling, just a soft knock. I opened the door, and a woman stood there, mid-40s, warm eyes, calm smile, holding a clipboard. "Hi," she said kindly. "I'm Miss Turner from Child Protective Services. Is now still a good time?" I nodded.
Yes.
"Please come in." Her voice was soft and slow, as if she knew I was terrified. "This is just a routine check. We received a report, but I want you to know, reports can be made by anyone for any reason. We follow up, but it doesn't mean we assume anything bad." My stomach twisted. "Can I ask what the report said?" She checked her clipboard. It was very vague. Something about emotional neglect. Emotional neglect. The irony almost made me laugh. My parents, the ones who skipped my daughter's birthdays, ignored her feelings, and showed love like it was a scoreboard, were accusing me of neglect? Ms. Turner continued, "These kinds of reports often come from family disagreements. It's sadly common." I swallowed hard. "May I see your daughter?" she asked gently. I nodded and went to wake Sophia. She rubbed her eyes and looked up at me.
"Mom?"
"Who's here?" "A nice lady," I whispered. "She just wants to make sure we're okay." Sophia nodded sleepily and followed me into the living room. The moment Miss Turner saw her, she smiled warmly.
"Hi, sweetheart."
"I love your pajamas." Sophia relaxed a little.
They talked.
Simple questions. Simple answers. Nothing scary. Miss Turner looked through the house. Our fridge full of food, the cozy rooms, the drawings Sophia hung on the walls, all the small proofs of a peaceful life. When she finished, she sat across from me and closed her folder. "Well," she said with a gentle smile, Everything here looks wonderful.
You're doing a great job.
I'll close this case as unfounded. The breath I released shook so hard it almost bent me in half. Thank you, I whispered. There's one more thing, she added carefully. If you believe someone is filing these reports to harass you, you can request documentation. You can also ask the police about your options. I nodded, because I already knew what I needed to do next. I needed to protect my daughter, legally, officially, permanently. When Miss Turner left, I sat on the couch, holding my chest, letting myself breathe for the first time all morning.
But peace didn't last.
At 11:22 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't CPS. It was my mother. You brought this on yourself. Then my father. Dad, you think calling the cops makes you strong? It makes you look unstable. Then my brother.
Eric.
Just apologize so they'll drop it. Drop it? They created it. And that was when something hardened in me, clean, cold, steady. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I was done letting them push, guilt, or control me. They opened this war. I would finish it. And not with screaming. Not with fighting. But with truth. Real, undeniable truth. I opened my laptop and began typing dates, screenshots, messages, memories. Not to post online. Not to shame them publicly. But to bring to a lawyer. I called a family law office and booked an urgent consultation. The lawyer's voice was firm. If they filed a false report, that's serious. If they showed up at your home aggressively, that's harassment. If they continue, you can file for a protective order. And yes, your child's safety is a legal priority. My chest loosened. I wasn't powerless. For the first time in years, I had a shield. And I was ready to use it. When the lawyer asked, "Do you want to proceed?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I want protection from my parents." He told me what documents to bring. I hung up the phone. And suddenly something strange happened. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I felt calm. Steady.
Clear.
Like a fog that had been around me for years was finally lifting. Later that evening, while I was cooking dinner, the sun dipped low and the kitchen glowed warm and orange. Sophia walked in and stood by me quietly. After a moment, she whispered, "Mom, are they going to yell at us again?" I turned off the stove and knelt beside her, brushing her hair behind her ear. "No," I said softly. "Not anymore." She stared at me, searching my face, then nodded slowly. In her eyes, I saw something that made my throat tighten.
She believed me.
And I would not break that trust. Dinner was calm. The house was quiet. For once, the world felt steady. But just after 8 p.m., a message came through, this time from my aunt, my mother's sister. The one who never got involved. Aunt Carol. "I think you should know your parents are telling the whole family that CPS took your daughter today." My jaw dropped. CPS took my daughter? I had just hugged Sophia goodnight. My parents weren't just lying. They were spreading the lie, building a story where I was the villain, and they were the victims. Aunt Carol followed up with, "I don't believe them. I know how they can be, but you need to protect yourself. This is getting out of control." Out of control was an understatement. This was warfare. And then the extreme event hit. At 8:43 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and froze. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't the police. It wasn't CPS. It was my mother's pastor and 2 members of the church prayer team. All 3 of them stood on my porch, one holding a Bible, another holding a clipboard, and the pastor looking at my house like he was preparing for a spiritual rescue mission. My stomach dropped. What were they told? Why were they here? And what were they planning to do? My phone buzzed right then with a text from Aunt Carol. "They're saying you're unfit. They're telling the church you're unstable. They think the pastor can convince you to hand over temporary custody for the child's well-being." My blood ran cold. Temporary custody? To them? Over my living daughter, who was asleep in the next room? I stepped back from the door, shaking, breath caught in my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was an ambush. A full-scale, coordinated attack. The doorbell rang again. And the pastor called softly through the door. "Child, your parents told us everything. We're here to help your daughter." My heart slammed into my ribs. Help her? From what? The pastor knocked again. "I'm asking you to open this door." My hand hovered near the doorknob. I didn't touch it, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was survival. And what happened next would change everything.